Hello, this is Mike at GameFromScratch. Welcome back to our ongoing Godot game engine tutorial series. Today we're going to be looking by user request at 2D lighting in the Godot engine. Now you'll notice that I've jumped forward a bit in time here. If you've been following the series back to back, it's because I've jumped up to using a Godot 2.2, I believe I'm on. So the user interface is going to change slightly from the previous tutorials, but don't worry, for the most part things all work. I actually did a video on the jump to 2.2, so if you want a bit of a recap, it's available there. Chances are if you're starting now, you're actually using a current version of Godot. So this is going to be easier to follow than previous parts of the tutorial. All right, so without further ado, what we're looking at today is 2D lighting. This is basically simulating 3D lighting in a 2D world. And the nice thing about using Godot is it's very, very easy. So with that disclaimer, let's jump right in. Here I've just created a very simple empty scene, and we're going to go ahead, just set up our, we want to node 2D as our root. Like so, and we shall dub the root. If you hear some background noises, I apologize. I've just got a brand new puppy and she occasionally makes noises when I don't want her to. Don't worry, in time she will get better, and I'll hopefully pause it in advance, but advance warning. All right, so I created our root node here, and I'm just going to bring in, I'm going to use this guy as my background. We just need something to interact with. So we're going to go ahead and create a new sprite. Him, and for our texture, we'll go ahead and load him, like so. And let's make you really big and ugly. All right, so there's our basic scene. I'll go ahead and save it. And we'll set the default. And run. Okay, so nothing magical so far, but we do have a scene to now interact with. Now what we're gonna do is add a light to the scene. Again, we're gonna add it to the root node, not to the sprite. Come up here and just click plus. And now what we want is a node 2D derived light 2D. So I want to create this guy, and you'll notice an exclamation mark right away. That's because it needs a texture. Now the texture is what defines the shape and intensity of the light. So what you want to do is create an alpha mapped image, grayscale, basically where the black is the least affected, white is the most affected. In this case, I'm going to use paint.net, very simple process. Paint.net is a free editor for Windows, but you can use whatever image editing program you want. Just do make sure that you download. When you're done, you ultimately want to save with transparency. So save with a file format such as the PNG format that encodes the alpha channel. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to create a 300 by 300 pixel image for defining our light. And I'm going to come in here, hit Control A, and delete the background. See this checkerboard transparency? That represents that there's no color or there's no alpha channel now. And I'm just going to come down here to define. We're going to create a circular map. So I'm just going to basically create a nice circle mask like so. And we're going to make our primary and secondary colors. All right, I want you to be darker. All right, so white to black. And now I'm just going to come up here to the gradient fill. Pretty much every single graphic application under the sun is going to be capable of doing this. But you see, we're just going to start in the middle and then span out. So most intense, least intense, and then no effect at all. So we're going to go ahead and save that guy. So save you as, and then light 2D, and we shall call the light mask PNG. All right, we got that guy saved. Now let's go back to our editor. All right, so we added our light. We've now can define the texture for it. So new image texture, load, bring in our light mask, like so. So now we've got this light defined, and you'll see as I drag it across the surface, there's the effect of it. Pretty cool. And it's a programmatical, it's a node derived object, so we can do pretty much anything we want to it. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and add a script to it. This current directory, save. We will call the light controller. And I'm just going to do a really simple script that responds to key presses and moves it around. So first delete what we got and set process input is true. And then here func input, and just if event.type equals event_type.key. So if a key is pressed, if that event.scan code equals key underscore right. Now keep in mind, I'm doing this for demonstrative purposes only. You're not going to want to use this key codes in your own game. You'd use input mapping probably. I've already done tutorials on input. You check the earlier part. I think it was part 3 where I covered this stuff. But in this case, all we're going to do is move ourselves. So this is the light node that we're moving. So move local x by 1. And the power of cut and paste coding, let's do the same thing for left and -1. All right, see if I screwed anything up. Yes, I did. Event type not found. Oh, input event, mixing my game engines up. All right, let's get that running. All right, so now you notice if I press the right arrow, you can see the light come across, and you can see the direct result of the light. So as we're over a white surface, it gets brighter. So you see the very center point of our light, this area right here, right there, that is defined by our image. So you can see the intensity is most intense in the center. And that's basically it. It's very cool, very powerful feature. Now we're gonna go back over here. I'll show you a couple of the settings of it. So with our light selected, expand this guy out a bit. So we just set our texture so far. We can also do a couple things. We can scale the light up so we can make it basically bigger or smaller. Here, I'll move this guy so he's on top so you can see. So obviously scale will affect the intent or the fall off of the light, like so. Or we can also come up here and go to energy, and this is the intensity of the light. So basically just bright white or almost none. Okay, so those are the 2 key values you're going to use there. Mode we're going to come back to in a second for a very neat trick. But the lighting effects are pretty straightforward, and the other thing you can do is set the tint or the shade of the light. So there we've got our light is reddish or blue, and we can come back down. Let's make it back to white though. And the intensity will determine how much of that color is applied. So if I go with my blue, as we change the energy level here, so 2, you'll see it's much more blue, and 0.5 is a little blue. Now blue is a bad choice because the color it's mixing with in the background isn't really showing the difference. But so you can tint the light quite simply. Now, and another important thing here is our interaction between our light and our sprite. So I'm going to do one thing before we leave here. We're going to be using something called an occluder, and we're going to want it to cast shadows. We're just going to turn shadows enabled to on. But otherwise, that's it for our light settings. We're not going to really play with anything else here. We'll go back to our sprite. And you'll notice in the sprite, if you go down to the canvas item, you've got this light max grid, and it tells you what channels interact with what channel. So go back to our light, and you'll see item mask, and it's set. The first channel is set. So if we went back to our sprite and said, all right, click this, and then turn channel 1 off, then you'll notice it is no longer interacting with that light. So if you want some lights to interact with some channels, or sort of some nodes to interact with the light and other nodes not to, and vice versa, just like with physics, you can set it up using basically this light mask here for the canvas item you're drawing with, and the light 2D, it is set via the item mask. So that's how you can have some things not interact with other things within your scene. All right, now let's back things up a bit and get into the topic of occluders. Now, occluders are cool. Now, so what's going to happen is, right now we have this light, and the light is affecting everything in the scene. Now let's say that this nose here was actually solid, and let's say like a wall somewhere in a game, and we didn't want the light to actually go through it. So what we need to do is basically set up an occluder. An occluder is like a polygonal shape that blocks out or masks away light. And how do we do this? Well, we come back to our sprite, which is where we're going to set the occluder up on, and create a new node, and you'll see it's right here, light occluder 2D, select that. Now you'll see there's an asterisk mark. It's not happy with us because we're not done yet. Now the next thing we need to do is come up here and actually add an occluder to it. So go new occluder polygon. So we now have an occluder polygon set to our scene, and you'll see now we have our editing tools up here. And we're going to want to do a new polygon, and we're just going to define out the shape roughly around our nose. Like so. So this area is now, you notice it suddenly went dark in that area. That's because the light is no longer interacting with that particular spot. So when we run our scene, you'll see light comes through, and that is an occlusion zone. So the light will not interact with it. You can see the direct result. And then eventually we're actually going to be inside of it, and our light disappears completely. and then outside. So this is how you can set up areas where light doesn't cast through. This is how you set your solid objects up in the world, is by defining occluders on them. And you'll notice I actually defined it on the item in the world itself, not on the light source. And that is it. That is essentially lighting in Godot. It's very, very straightforward, very easy to use. Now there is another thing that we can cover here, and this is very useful for things like fog of war. Now let's go back to our light for a second. And you'll notice we've got our add mode, and this is how the light interacts with the scene. And so far we've been doing it it's as an addition, so you can also subtract or mix, but what we're going to do now is actually mask. And now imagine if your light was, your character carrying a torch that followed them around, or you're doing fog of war. Well, this is an image that will basically define the light around the person. So you can do a lot of neat effects for this, but we're going to have to go ahead and create a new mask to do this. So back to our trusty image editor. We'll create this as 300 by 300 again. I'm just picking that value at random, by the way. So there is our end result. Now what we want to do is set up a light mask here. I'm going to go ahead, set you, fill. So we're fine with opacity. Oops. Complete. Fill it with there. That was my stupid. All right. Fill it with black. We're good to go. Now what we want to do is have it so just the circular area in the middle is good for our character. So let's swap this guy back out. Oops. Come on. Are you not applied? Apply. All right. So now I'm going to go here. We'll create another circle in the middle, a little bit smaller this time, like you. And we are going to use the same tools as before. So we're going to do a gradient. And we want to do white to black. And you. Actually, I want to do a little bit less. I'll do that. There. So now what basically we're going to have is all of this guy is blacked out. So we'll call this guy, save it as, actually light mask was the better name here. That was a bad choice I used the first time. So we'll save it as light mask anyways. So now we're going to go back over to the Godot engine. Stop running. Godot. There we go. All right. So we use our same guy, and we'll move him off so I don't immediately spoil what we're going to do. And we're going to switch this guy, instead of using that texture, we will load it. Oops, I missed. All right, load our other guy. All right, so you can see immediately it doesn't have the result you want. It's like a very low intensity light. But now let's switch that mix mode. So back to our light 2D, and we're going to change the mode instead to mask. And now you're going to see a very profound effect. Ta-da! So this is one way you can implement fog of war. So if I wanted to go ahead and have it apply a little bit more to our scene, like so. So you could actually center this guy around your character. And that was how you implement, a limited visibility range. So that's where your mode comes in, very, very important. But you'll notice the same basic principles work here. So where the intensity is the strongest, there is the most light, but we're kind of inverting it. So we're kind of dimming out all of the light except for in the area of our mask. And this could actually interact with another light. They're not mutually exclusive. So I could create another light within the scene and have a mask. And as long as our mask is within the area of that light, it will work just fine. Okay, so that is it. That's all I want to cover today. I hope you found that useful. If you do, please do click like. And again, I've done all kinds of Godot tutorials, and I have more coming up. Don't worry, I won't be taking a number of months between releases coming up. So if you do want to see more Godot coverage in the future, please do click subscribe. There's all kinds coming, along with other game engines, technology reviews, you name it. So I hope you did enjoy that. I will see you all later before my voice gives up. Have a good day. Bye.